Hello and welcome back to another episode of leaguE Talk, the podcast all about coaching, management and all things League of Legends. In today's episode, we have another Q&A. Now, I got contacted by a person called VisionLord, is his in-game name, or Sheldor, and he is now a listener of the podcast. He found it on Spotify, which is fantastic, and he joined the Discord, had a couple of messages with me. We've had a little bit of conversation. And I was hoping to help him out in any way, shape or form that I can. Now, he has a long-term goal of going pro, and we've spoken a little bit about what his schedule looks like. He's got a fantastic schedule that involves exercise, seems like good eating, things like that. So we're not going to focus on that. So I asked him, what are the two things that I could really help you with? Alongside linking his op.gg to see if there was anything I could help with in that regard. Now, my in-game knowledge isn't as good as my out-of-game knowledge, so that's where I'm going to be focusing on today. And there were two things that he was focusing on, or he would like me to help with, put it that way. And they were sleep and diet. Now, these are really interesting, as this is something that I've been working on recently with some players. And I thought I'd break down some of the stuff that I've been working on in a, organizational environment, and then a couple of bits on in-game as well. So let's start with sleep. So sleep is super important. We've spoken about why sleep is important and getting the proper amount of sleep, and that's a word that keeps cropping up, is the proper amount of sleep. Things like athletic performance, mood can all be changed just through having the right amount of sleep. And the right amount, generally speaking, always the magic number is 8 hours. So I would try and make sure that we're getting 8 hours of sleep. That's the first thing. So how do we make sure that we have 8 hours of sleep? Now, Sheldor or VisionLord has a very busy day, and it's important to keep that up as his scheduling is good. So let's figure out some ways that can coexist with his routine and that can help you, VisionLord, with your sleep. Now, most of the time, and from my personal experience, I have dealt with something called insomnia for, well, as long as I can remember, until about 6 months ago. Now, the only thing that changed my insomnia was scheduling. So I'd had medication, I've been to sleep therapists, things like that in the past, and nothing really helped. Certainly not to the extent that scheduling did. Now, scheduling for me, in terms of sleep, is making sure that I got 8 hours. But how did I do that? So for me, what I did was made sure that every morning my alarm goes off at 6:30, and that's when I wake up. Not necessarily get up, most of the time I do, but wake up. Now, the reason why that is so important, and not going back to sleep, getting up when that first alarm goes off, is twofold. Feels like you've won, you've got up, I'm awake. I feel like at 6:30 I'm already above anyone else, and I feel like I'm winning, because not many people will get up at that time, certainly not in the esports world. Granted, I'm still awake for a similar amount of time, but this is when I get most of my good work done, because no one else is awake. I get time alone for the gym, I get time alone to record things like this. It's currently 9 a.m, so this morning I've been to the gym, I've had a bit of breakfast, done a little bit of research, and straight into the recording. So for me, the alarm goes off at 6:30 and I get up. I wake up. And that's the same every day. Now, I know that's not always the easiest, but I reckon about at least 6 of the 7 days I will wake up at 6:30 in the morning. If not, probably 7 o'clock maybe on one day, so I get a little bit more sleep. And in order to get the 8 hours, that means I have to be asleep by 10:30, which means that is scheduled into my day. 10:30 asleep, 6:30 wake up. And that is final. So that's the main thing that has helped me get the 8 hours of sleep. Now, it's not always the same for everyone, but I thought that would be the first place that I would really start, is make sure when that alarm goes off, you get up. Your body takes sleep when it needs it, truthfully. Not necessarily regardless of things like insomnia, but it is important to see it that way. So, once you've got your schedule sorted, you've got your 8 hours, and you're waking up at a similar time, if not the same time, and you're still struggling with sleep, there's a couple of things that I think are important alongside that. The first one is something called blue light reduction. Now, blue light is a very difficult thing, and if you literally just Google blue light, and I recommend everyone who can do that, who's listening, to just do that. Just put blue light and then put sleep into Google. Blue light sleep. You will see hundreds and hundreds of articles as to why blue light is negative for our sleep. Now, to cut a long story short, blue light comes from most screens, so computer screens, phones, laptops, anything like that. That's where blue light comes from. In essence, it's unnatural light. So normally when you look at light bulbs, you have yellow light, and outdoors is considered white light, and then the screens are considered blue light. So blue light is very, very negative for sleep. It stimulates eyes, it stimulates our brain, it keeps us awake. So make sure that your blue light is reduced. But how do we do that? So there's a very, very good program that I've recently been introduced, and I highly recommend it to everyone. It's called f.lux. And you download that onto your computer. It's Windows. I believe it's on Mac as well. And all that it does is it starts to dim the blue light and completely get rid of blue light. And you'll notice your screen goes a little bit orange or yellow at times, dependent on what's happening outside. So if it's middle of the day, don't worry, your blue light's still there. When it starts to get closer to what you put down as your bedtime or what time you put down that you wake up at, it changes. So it sort of shifts the blue light and the orange light dependent on what time of day it is, what the weather's like outside, and what time you're waking up and going to bed. So that's a really important little factor just to think about there. If you have an iPhone, I don't know if it's on Androids or things like that. If you're watching this on YouTube, I can show it to you here. If you tap and hold onto your brightness, there is a button that says night shift, and if you click night shift, your screen goes a little bit more orange. So maybe an hour or so before you're going to bed, start reducing your blue light. That's one really good way of doing it. But making sure that you are also settling down, and this links back to scheduling. I always tell people, and I tell a lot of players, to settle down for at least an hour, wind down for 1 hour before going to bed. That means doing whatever you need to do that just chills you out. So some people, love a bath and like candles and do it that way. Other people like reading. Other people just prefer to lay in bed and listen to some videos, some podcasts, things like that. For me, it's just a matter of chilling out, just physically getting into bed half an hour to an hour before I go to sleep, and working it that way. The next couple of things that I want to talk about after scheduling and blue light reduction are breathing and mindfulness techniques. So breathing exercises are really good for calming alongside mindfulness techniques. So there are two. Now for sleep, these are very important. Just controlling your breathing. So we've spoken about two methods before, the 4-1-4 method and the 5-7 method. These are both very important in terms of breathing exercises that will help you calm down, get into more of a serene state, and while you're in bed, it will get you ready to sleep. So if you're using the 4-1-4 method, and for those who haven't heard of it, you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold it for 1, and breathe out for 4 seconds. And this is a matter of controlling your breath. So it's not like and then you hold it for another 2 seconds. Just make sure that you're breathing in slowly for 4 seconds, holding it for 1, and breathing out for 4 more. And it's the same with the 5-7, except there's no hold. So breathe in for 5 and breathe out for 7. What that does is gets rid of all the carbon dioxide and all the toxins that can come out in your lungs and your breath, and fills it with more oxygen. More oxygen, the better. So if you are in, using these techniques are very good for anti-tilt as well. So if you are in bed, this will calm you down an awful lot and get you just into that sort of state that's ready to go to sleep. Now for mindfulness, the thing that I'm learning more and more about is something called a body scan. Now a body scan is just taking note, literally going from head to toe, taking note of any comfort, discomfort, and any sensations and feelings that you have physically in your body. So you could take note of things like temperature, you could take note of pain or comfort if you feel very comfortable. You could take note of lots of other things. So these are just some of the examples, but just noticing what's going on with your body physically is a really good way of doing it. Now when you're sleeping, this sounds a little bit airy-fairy, but give it a go. When you're doing that body scan, once you've finished going through each body part, mentally just tell that body part to go to sleep. And imagine that scan goes down. So you go head, go to sleep, eyes, go to sleep, nose, go to sleep. And this was one thing that was taught to me by a sleep therapist. So just as you go down your body and as you're taking note of certain things, after you've done that, just mentally tell that body part to go to sleep. It's a technique. It doesn't work for everyone. It did work for me, so it's an interesting one, a bit of a weird one, as I always say with mindfulness and meditation stuff. It can come across as quite airy-fairy, but always just try it. If it doesn't work, never mind. All you've done is wasted 10 minutes of your life, maybe. So those are the main things. Mindfulness can also work in, just taking note of your breath, noticing where your breath goes, what happens when you breathe. Are you noticing that your chest pushes out? Are you noticing that your belly pushes out? Are you noticing, sideways breathing? How does your body work when you're breathing? Is it coming through the nose? Is it through the mouth? That's another one. It just brings you into a more aware, serene state. So give those two a go. But that sums up pretty much exactly what I wanted to talk about for sleep. That's a synopsis. And then for diet, This one for me is very, very simple. My nutritional style is to go with what I would call a balanced diet. And balanced diets, and if any of the players that I've worked with have listened to this, they've heard me bang on and on and on and on about this, consist of 3 things. So the first one is what's called a complex carb. You have a portion of fruit or veg and a lean protein. For me, this sums up what a balanced diet is. And a complex carb are things best if they're brown, so brown rice, brown pasta, brown bread. These are complex carbs. You can have starchy vegetables such as sweet potatoes, such as normal potatoes. These sort of things are all complex carbs. Oats is another really good one. A portion of fruit or veg, which is pretty self-explanatory, and a lean protein. So if you eat meat, it's things like chicken breast, turkey, lean mince is a good one. Pork is fantastic as well. So all of these are lean proteins, in the right circumstances, of course. And if you are doing this, this is best for your cognitive ability, which describes how you acquire and retain knowledge. That's a really good place to start. But one thing that I wanted to touch on more, once we've got the idea of having 1/3 of your plate being veg, 1/3 of your plate being a complex carb, and the rest being a protein, the important thing for solo queue and for people that are trying to improve is snacking. If you've got regular eating times, one thing that can help with concentration lapses, can help with mood, all these sorts of things, is snacking and making sure that you're snacking at the right times and with the right foods. So, one thing that I really, really believe in is something called slow releasing energy. So bananas, oats, apples, things like that have natural sugar in them and help rather than an up and down in terms of your energy, a slow sort of U or a curve, something like that, is really beneficial. So look to snack on those things. There's a reason why if you watch the LEC broadcast and the LCS broadcast, the players really go for bananas during breaks in games of best of threes and things like that. That's why. It's a slow releasing energy, it's a portion of fruit, natural sugar, really, really good place to start. So those are the other things that I would consider looking at for your diet. Now, once you've got sleep and diet, now diet is massively impactful on your sleep. If you're a coffee drinker or a caffeine drinker, that has a half-life of 6 to 8 hours, so making sure that you taper off your coffee 6 to 8 hours, or Red Bull or Monster, whatever that may be, 6 to 8 hours before your bedtime is really, really important as well. So for me, I won't have coffee past 2 o'clock because my bedtime's 10:30, and I want to make sure that all that caffeine's out of my system prior to that. So those are just some little pointers in terms of sleep and diet. The last thing that I wanted to quickly touch on is in-game stuff. One thing that I believe is really, really important, and maybe worth having a look at if you don't already, is using applications and sites like ProBuilds. So if you go and have a look at ProBuilds, if you just Google it, and you put in the champion that you're playing, what it will do is it gives you all of the pros that have been playing that champion in recent times, and it will look at their runes, their masteries, not so much anymore, their runes, it will look at their build, the skill max order, and literally copying that. Once you know the way that the best players will play a champion, you can replicate that and go on from there. So for example, I noticed you played Lux, and maybe that was something that you were enjoying at support, but maybe having a look at different runes and different skill maxing orders might be the best way to go with that. Maybe it's something you already do, but hey ho, worth a little shot anyway. And you said that you've been having a rough week as well, so VisionLord hadn't had such a fantastic week of solo queue, had demoted a division for him. And I just wanted to talk quickly about one way to get out of lost streaks. And the best way for me, and I yap on about this every flaming podcast that we talk about in-game stuff, is playing in comfort. So for me, playing jungle, comfort is Sejuani. I play engaged tanks, and that's what I play in the jungle. That's what I've always been best at. And Sejuani is my comfort pick. I noticed that when I start to go into lost streaks, if I'm playing lots of different champions, so if my champion pool is rather large, which to be fair it isn't, but generally speaking, if it is a large champion pool, keeping your champion pool small and playing similar styles is one fantastic way to do this. That's what playing comfort is, noticing what you're best at, noticing rather than what the meta is necessarily. So even when Sejuani wasn't meta as she is now, which is a huge pick, first pickable for sure, blind pickable for sure, I was playing Sejuani when I would go into lost streaks, just for that reason. It's comfortable, I know how this champion works, and I can focus on other things. So take a little note of that as well. So that pretty much sums up everything that I wanted to talk about today on this podcast. We've spoken about sleep, why sleep is important, the breathing exercises, the mindfulness techniques, and blue light reduction as ways to help you getting out of poor sleep patterns and help you sleeping for longer. Making sure that you're waking up at the same time and getting that 8 hours is vitally important. Scheduling and putting things into place, such as winding down an hour before bed, doing something that you find relaxing, and waking up at the same time regardless is very, very important. We then moved on to diet, and we spoke about the importance of having those 3 key tenets of a balanced diet, which was the lean protein, the complex carb, and the fruit and veg portion, as this is fantastic for cognitive ability, fantastic for energy, slow releasing energy, and for keeping your energy levels at a similar state, as well as just having the right macro and micronutrients in each meal. Finally, we moved on to talking about using sites like ProBuilds and even Mobalytics to your advantage in some cases, and using these to make sure you know what you're doing before you getting into game, and before you even get into queue sometimes as well. And then finally, a little help with getting out of lost streaks is playing in comfort. So making sure that you're keeping your champion pool relatively small and playing similar style champions. And what I meant by that was, if you are a jungle main, things like Sejuani, things like Jarvan, these tanky engage type champions that have a similar playstyle regardless of the team comp and the enemy team comp. So these are the tips. I hope this has been useful for you, VisionLord or Sheldor. This is something that I want to keep doing, so if anyone is listening and has a question, hit me up, Instagram at league_talk or Twitter at leaguetalkshow. These are the best places to get in contact with me. Just send me a DM, they're always open, and I would love to help in any way, shape or form that I can. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. I hope this was useful for you, VisionLord, and we will catch you on the next one.